There comes a moment in life when some people realize an uncomfortable truth. Perhaps the greatest obstacle to finding deep love was never the absence of the right person, but the parts of themselves they still cannot face. For years, Carl Jung studied the mysteries of the human mind and discovered something that can completely change the way we see relationships. Before a soul can truly receive a genuine connection, it must cross an inner territory that many people spend their entire lives avoiding, because what you hide from yourself continues to choose for you. Your fears, your wounds, and the parts of yourself you have rejected continue to influence who you attract, who you push away, and the kind of love you are able to sustain. But there is a question few people have the courage to ask. What if the relationships that hurt you the most were not just losses, but messages revealing exactly what needed to be transformed? In this video, we will explore the hidden side of love according to Carl Jung and discover why some people need to go through profound inner changes before experiencing a truly rare and authentic connection. There is a truth about love that few people are prepared to accept. Often, the greatest obstacle to experiencing a deep connection is not the absence of the right person, but the parts of ourselves that still remain hidden. Carl Jung spent decades studying the mysteries of the human mind and realized something unsettling. Within every person exists an invisible region made up of emotions, desires, and traits that were rejected at some point in life. A part we try to hide from others, and especially from ourselves. Jung called this region the shadow. But the shadow is not only what we consider negative, it also holds talents we never developed, feelings we never expressed, and aspects of our personality that we abandoned in order to be accepted. The problem is that what we deny within ourselves does not disappear. It remains present, influencing our choices, our reactions, and even the people we feel attracted to. That is why some relationships seem to repeat the same story with different characters. The person changes, the circumstances change, but the pain remains. Because as long as an unconscious part of us continues to control our decisions, we try to build love using only a limited version of who we truly are. And perhaps this is the hardest discovery of all. Before finding someone capable of loving us deeply, we must learn to look at what we have spent years trying to hide. Because true love does not begin when someone finally finds us. It begins when we stop running away from ourselves. From the earliest years of life, we learn a silent rule. Some parts of us are accepted, while others must be hidden. A child quickly notices which behaviors receive affection, approval, and attention. They learn that being obedient can bring acceptance, that expressing certain emotions can lead to rejection, and that some characteristics must be adjusted in order to belong. Over time, this adaptation creates what Carl Jung called the persona, the image we present to the world, a kind of psychological mask built to show what we believe is safest to reveal. But there is one detail many people ignore. The mask can hide a part of us, but it can never eliminate it. Everything that has been repressed continues to exist in the unconscious. The anger that was never expressed, the creativity abandoned out of fear of judgment, the need to be seen hidden behind a false sense of independence. Everything remains waiting to be acknowledged. And it is precisely in relationships that this shadow tends to appear most strongly. Because when someone gets emotionally close, our defenses begin to weaken. Daily life reveals contradictions, insecurities, and feelings that we can hide from almost everyone, but not from the person who shares our intimacy. Many people believe their romantic conflicts arise only because of their partner's actions. However, Jung believed that we often react not only to what happens outside of us, but also to what those events awaken within us. The person who bothers us the most may be revealing something we have not yet accepted about ourselves. And this discovery completely changes the way we see love. Because perhaps some of the battles we fight in relationships were never truly against the other person, but against forgotten parts of our own soul. There is a reason why some people are able to awaken extremely intense feelings within us. Sometimes a simple comment causes an exaggerated reaction. A small distance feels like a devastating rejection. An ordinary action from a partner awakens insecurity, fear, or a desperate need for reassurance. For Jung, these moments reveal something important. The other person often functions as a mirror, not because they are responsible for all of our pain, but because certain encounters reveal inner parts that had remained hidden. Imagine someone who spent their entire life believing that showing anger was wrong. This person learns to control their emotions, always trying to appear calm and balanced. However, anger does not disappear. It may emerge as resentment, sarcasm, coldness, or emotional withdrawal. Within a relationship, this repressed shadow finds an opportunity to appear. The partner may simply point out a difficulty, but the reaction seems much greater than the situation itself. The reason is that the moment touched an old wound, a part that was never truly understood. This is how many relationship cycles repeat themselves. A person believes they always choose unsuitable partners, that they always find someone incapable of recognizing their worth, or that they always end up experiencing the same disappointment. But Jung suggested a different question. Why does this situation keep appearing in my life? That question changes everything, because instead of only looking outward and searching for someone to blame, we begin investigating what that experience is trying to reveal about us. This does not mean accepting any behavior or justifying destructive relationships. It means understanding the difference between what belongs to the other person and what awakens a part of ourselves that needs attention. When we make this distinction, the relationship stops being only a source of suffering and begins to transform into an opportunity for awareness. But for that to happen, we must abandon one of the greatest illusions about love. The belief that another person can finally fill everything we feel is missing inside us. For a long time, humanity believed in one of the most powerful and dangerous ideas about love, that there is someone out there capable of completing what is missing within us. This image appears in stories, movies, and romantic dreams. The idea of finding a special person who will finally bring security, happiness, and meaning to life seems enchanting. But Jung observed that this search often comes from an unconscious illusion. When we look for someone to fill our inner emptiness, we do not see the real person. We see what we project onto them. We create a perfect image, place our expectations, desires, and needs onto the other person, and believe we have found the answer to all our pain. But no human being can carry that weight. Over time, reality appears. The person who seemed perfect reveals their limitations, fears, and imperfections. And what once seemed like an extraordinary connection can turn into frustration. The problem was never that the person was human. The problem was expecting them not to be. For Jung, true love is not born when two broken halves meet trying to complete each other. It is born when two whole people still in the process of growth choose to walk together. Because a healthy relationship should not be a desperate attempt to escape one's own loneliness. It should be a meeting between two people who have learned to remain complete even when they are apart. And this shift in awareness reveals a new way of loving. The shadow does not appear to destroy, it appears to reveal. It shows what has been ignored for too long and asks for integration, not rejection. Jung believed that the path toward becoming whole passes precisely through the acceptance of these hidden parts. It is not about eliminating everything we consider imperfect, but about bringing awareness to what previously acted in silence. Because what we do not recognize within ourselves continues to control our choices. When a person learns to look at their own wounds without running away or condemning themselves, something begins to change. They stop searching in another person for a solution to their pain and begin building a more mature relationship with themselves. And only after this process does a new ability to love emerge. A love that does not depend on saving or being saved. A love that is not born from the fear of losing but from the freedom to share. But to reach this point, there is still one final barrier many people face. Learning to trust the timing of their own transformation. There is one of the most difficult stages on the path of deep transformation. Learning to wait without feeling like you are standing still. We live in a time when almost everything seems to demand speed. We want quick answers, immediate results, and instant solutions for our pain. But emotional maturity does not work this way. For Carl Jung, the human psyche has its own cycles. Just as a seed needs time to create roots before it can grow, a person also needs to go through periods of preparation before being able to sustain what they desire to experience. Many times, what we interpret as delay is actually a process of construction. During this period, life invites us to develop something essential, the ability to remain whole while we wait. Because there is a great difference between wanting someone and needing someone in order to feel that we exist. When a person still depends on a relationship to fill their identity, they often enter connections driven by fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough. Fear of losing what they believe is their only source of happiness. But when they learn to build their own life, their own dreams, and their own emotional stability, something changes. They stop looking for someone to fill a void and begin desiring someone to share their fullness with. It is within this space of growth that perception begins to change. Silence no longer feels like abandonment, waiting no longer feels like punishment, and time begins to be understood as preparation, because some connections require a version of ourselves that we are still becoming. And perhaps the greatest challenge is not finding the right person. Perhaps it is becoming someone capable of recognizing, receiving, and sustaining true love when it finally arrives. There is an invisible barrier that separates many people from the love they claim to desire, the fear of being truly seen. Throughout life, many people create emotional armor. After disappointments, rejection, and painful experiences, they learn to hide parts of themselves to avoid suffering again. They create a version that is more controlled, more acceptable, and easier to admire. But there is a problem with this protection. The same barrier created to prevent pain also prevents true connection. Carl Jung believed that the integration of personality requires recognizing what we hide behind our social image. The persona shows the world what we want to reveal, but true intimacy is born when we are also able to show our imperfections, because no one creates a deep bond by knowing only a mask. Real love begins when two people have the courage to abandon the need to appear perfect. This does not mean exposing every wound carelessly or allowing anyone to cross our boundaries. It means having the courage to be honest about who we are, without spending our entire lives pretending to be someone else in order to gain acceptance. Vulnerability is precisely where connection begins. When someone realizes they no longer need to hide their insecurities, fears, and contradictions, something powerful happens. The relationship stops being a search for approval and becomes a space of authenticity. And it is at this moment that a person begins to attract different kinds of connections. Because when we stop showing only what we believe will be loved, we finally create space to be loved for who we truly are. Throughout life, many people search for someone who can see their true essence. But before that, there is a deeper question. Have you ever had the courage to see that essence within yourself? When a person goes through this entire process of inner transformation, something begins to change in the way they see their own destiny. Love stops being a desperate search for someone who will fill an absence and becomes a conscious choice between two people who have their own stories, their own scars, and their own paths. Carl Jung believed that the true meeting between two people happens when they are able to come closer without trying to use the other person as a solution for their inner conflicts. Because when two people enter a relationship carrying only their needs and wounds, they end up creating an emotional prison. Each one expects the other to heal pain that was never truly faced. But when awareness exists, the relationship takes on another meaning. The partner stops being a savior and becomes a companion on the journey. Someone who does not exist to complete what is missing, but to share a life that already has meaning. This type of connection is not built through perfection. It is born precisely from the acceptance that both people are still evolving, learning, and facing their own shadows. Conflicts stop being seen as signs of failure and begin to be understood as opportunities for growth. An argument does not have to mean the end. A difference does not have to mean incompatibility. When emotional maturity exists, every challenge becomes an opportunity to better understand yourself and the other person. The deepest love is not the one where two people never face difficulties. It is the one where two people choose to remain present, even when difficulties appear. Because truly loving someone does not mean finding a person without flaws. It means finding someone with whom it is possible to walk with honesty, courage, and acceptance. And this is the point where love stops being an attempt to escape one's own loneliness and becomes an experience of shared growth. There comes a moment when inner transformation begins to directly reflect the way we see love and life itself. After facing their shadows, abandoning old illusions and learning to remain whole, a person begins to understand something fundamental. True love is not born from the attempt to escape oneself. It is born from the freedom to be with oneself. Carl Jung believed that the process of individuation, the journey of becoming who we truly are, requires the integration of all parts of our personality. Not only what we show to the world, but also what we have kept hidden. When this integration happens, the constant need for approval begins to lose its power. A person no longer needs to change their essence in order to be accepted. They no longer feel they need to gain value through someone else's perception. And this change creates a new way of relating. The fear of losing stops controlling their choices. Excessive attachment begins to disappear. Love stops being a prison built by insecurity and becomes a conscious decision. Because there is a profound difference between needing someone and choosing someone. Need comes from emptiness. Choice comes from freedom. When two people reach this point, they do not meet to hide their wounds, but to share their journeys. They are able to see each other's imperfections without turning every flaw into a threat. They can offer support without taking on the responsibility of saving. They can love without turning the other person into an extension of their own needs. And perhaps this is one of Jung's greatest lessons about relationships. The most powerful love does not happen when we find someone who completes what is missing. It happens when we find someone with whom we can share what we have already built within ourselves. After this entire journey of transformation, there is an understanding that completely changes the way we see love. The greatest achievement is not finding someone perfect, but becoming someone capable of experiencing a true connection. For a long time, many people believed that love would arrive when they found the ideal person, as if there were someone capable of erasing all insecurities, healing all wounds, and finally bringing a sense of completeness. But Carl Jung revealed a different perspective. Deep love begins when we stop rejecting parts of ourselves. When we accept our contradictions, our vulnerabilities, and the sides of ourselves we prefer to hide, we stop living through masks. And when we no longer need to hide who we are, we also stop accepting relationships based on illusions. The shadow stops being an enemy and becomes a source of awareness. What once caused shame transforms into learning. What once felt like a weakness begins to reveal an important part of our story. And this is where one of the greatest emotional transformations happens. We stop searching for someone to save us. Because a person who knows their own essence does not hand someone else the responsibility for their happiness. They share, they choose, they love. This kind of love carries a different strength. It is not born from the fear of being alone, but from the genuine desire to walk beside someone. It does not demand perfection, because it understands that every human being carries both light and shadow. It does not seek a fantasy, because it values reality. In the end, Jung's greatest message is simple, yet profound. No one can fully love what they continue to reject within themselves. The most important encounter does not happen only when we find another person. It happens when we finally find ourselves. When we look back and observe the entire path we have traveled, we realize that every experience played a role in shaping who we have become. The losses, the distance, the disappointments, and the periods of loneliness that once seemed meaningless begin to reveal a new perspective. Nothing was merely an interruption. Every difficult moment brought an opportunity to see something that had remained hidden. Carl Jung believed that a person's inner life has a constant movement toward integration. There is a silent search to unite what we show to the world with what we keep hidden within ourselves. And perhaps that is exactly why some people need to walk deeper paths before experiencing certain connections. Not because they were forgotten by life, but because they were being prepared. True transformation happens when we understand that love does not arrive to destroy our loneliness, but to meet someone who has learned how to walk with themselves. The right person does not appear to erase our story. They arrive when we are able to look at that story with acceptance, when we realize that our wounds do not make us less worthy of love. They are part of our humanity. The past stops being a place of regret and becomes a source of understanding. Pain stops being only a scar and becomes a lesson. And then something extraordinary happens. Love stops being a desperate search for an external answer and becomes an expression of what has already been built within us. In the end, perhaps the greatest discovery is this: the love that truly transforms does not begin when we find someone who completes us. It begins when we finally stop abandoning ourselves. And when two people reach this place of awareness, they do not meet to fill empty spaces. They meet to share their wholeness. There is a truth that many people spend their entire lives trying to find outside themselves, but that has always been waiting to be discovered within. True love is not a reward given to those who have never suffered. It is not a prize reserved for those who manage to become perfect. From Carl Jung's perspective, the deepest love is born precisely when a person has the courage to look at their own wholeness, their light, their shadow, their strengths, their vulnerabilities. Because as long as we reject parts of who we are, we continue searching in another person for an acceptance we still cannot offer ourselves. And this search creates dependence, fear, and impossible expectations. But when we learn to embrace our own story, something changes. We stop loving out of need and begin loving by choice. We stop looking for someone to fill an absence and begin sharing what already exists within us. This may be the greatest transformation a person can experience. Understanding that love is not about finding someone who makes us complete. It is about finding someone with whom we can share the journey of continuing to grow. If this content sparked some reflection in you, remember that many other people are also seeking to better understand their own minds, emotions, and relationships. So subscribe to the channel to follow the next videos. Leave a like if this message brought meaning to your life. And thank you for staying until the end. Because perhaps the greatest journey of all is not finding someone who finally sees us. Perhaps it is learning for the first time to fully see the one who has always been with us, ourselves.